There's an article in Politico about the fact that the religious landscape is undergoing massive change, and this can have an important impact on the 2024 election. To summarize the article very briefly, it is that there's been a decline of religious self-identification and religious practice in the United States over the past decade. But it's not evenly all over the country. Now, you might expect me to say the decline is in like the Northeast or in California. The interesting thing here is they're talking about a religious decline in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan, which, by the way, notice happen also to be important swing states. And this is good news for the Democrats. Why? Because the Democrats today pretty clearly seem to be the secular party. Republicans are, to a degree, the religious party. And so if religious identification is going down, that doesn't seem to bode well for Republicans. But the good news on the Republican front is that there seems to be a religious surge in places like Florida and Texas among Hispanics, for example, both in Florida and in Texas. For example, interestingly, church attendance dramatically up in Miami-Dade County. Notice that Trump won Miami-Dade in 2020. So what do you make of these changes? First of all, what do you think is causing the religious shift? And do you agree that it's a political, that the political ramifications are significant?
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing an increase in just white voters in general being less religious, unfortunately. And I'm sure in places like the Rust Belt, it's because there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of drugs. Unfortunately, there aren't as good of jobs there anymore. Crime is getting worse. So just like the American fabric of social life there has really broken down. And then I think as far as the South, I mean, a lot of Hispanic immigrants are not interested in wokeness. They're not interested in, Latinx or LGBTQ stuff, and so have more traditional values. Hopefully that continues with their kids and doesn't just die out with the first generation. But yeah, I think that a lot of the people in the Sun Belt are going to be kind of keeping some of that religious culture intact. And hopefully we see that in Arizona also, because it is pretty clear that the Republican Party is the party of at least some sense of values, even if you're not Christian, the sense of, these things are wrong, these things are right. Whereas on the left, it's really anything goes. And they pretty much make all of these other social issues their religion. So,
I mean, it's pretty obvious, and I speak at a lot of these GOP Lincoln dinners. Mm-hmm. You can very clearly see the Republican Party is the party of patriotism. They always have the pledge. Mm-hmm. It's the party of God. There's always an invocation, typically a blessing. A pastor is brought up to the podium, sometimes a rabbi. And it's also the party of the military and law and order, because there's usually some salute to veterans. Will all people who serve in the military stand up? Go to a Democratic Party event, and you notice those three things are absent.
Right.
Very often, no pledge. No invocation, and no sort of gesture of respect to the military. So It's clear that we're talking here about something important in its own terms, but also something with political ramifications. So what you're saying about the places like Michigan and Pennsylvania is that Christianity was tied in with cultural stability and civic life. And with the breakdown of that civic life, religious attendance has eroded.
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of those areas we even saw, unfortunately, with the pro-life bills, they didn't pass. Like Michigan has a really egregious one. So I think it just shows the fact that the place has changed. It's not the place it used to be. And unfortunately, I think this increasing secularization of those areas is going to mean that we have a less good of chance of winning those areas. We don't have the upper hand we used to have, because the people who live there are so secular and they hear speeches from our kinds of people that are invoking God and those kinds of things, they're not going to
respond as well. I mean, I think what's so unfortunate about all this is that the Democrats create the problem. They create the blight. They create the environment in which jobs go away and little leagues disappear and community breaks down and families break down. And then they reap the political benefits of what they've done. Because by wrecking people's lives, they make those people more dependent on the government, less dependent, if you will, ultimately on a civic and religious structure that upheld those communities. And the Democrats go, wow, this is working out for us pretty well.